In fact, it's a story that reminds us that kindness can echo further than we ever expect, and that even the smallest sacrifice can lead to the biggest surprises. Today, we're diving into the unbelievable tale of a poor girl who made a decision no one expected. She missed one of the most important exams of her life just to save a stranger who turned out to be a member of one of the most feared and respected motorcycle brotherhoods in the world, the Hells Angels. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know what risk she was taking. And she certainly didn't know that her one act of compassion would bring 100 Hells Angels roaring to her doorstep the very next day. But what they came for and what happened afterward will completely change the way you look at destiny, loyalty, and unexpected gratitude. This story matters because it forces us to ask ourselves something important. What is the real value of doing the right thing? Is it about the rewards we hope to receive? Or is it about the person we become when no one is watching? In a world where people often choose convenience over compassion, this young girl's bravery and selflessness remind us that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can shift entire futures. And as you'll see, her life was about to transform in ways she never imagined, all because she listened to her heart instead of her schedule. So sit back, stay tuned, and get ready, because this story is about courage, sacrifice, and the powerful ripple effect of a single good deed. Let's begin. The story truly begins with Maya, a hard-working 19-year-old girl whose life had been defined by struggle long before this moment. She lived with her mother in a cramped one-room apartment on the edge of town, a place where the wallpaper peeled like old memories and the refrigerator hummed louder than the traffic outside. Money was always tight, and every month felt like a battle they barely survived. Still, Maya carried a quiet determination in her eyes, the kind that could cut through any hardship. She believed that education was her only ticket out of poverty, her only chance to rewrite the story she'd been handed at birth. She had spent months preparing for her final scholarship exam, the one test that stood between her and a full ride to the university she had dreamed about since she was 12. If she passed, everything could change. Her future, her mother's future, the course of their entire lives. She studied late at night under a flickering bulb, worked part-time shifts during the day, and sacrificed sleep, comfort, and even friendships along the way. Her teachers believed in her. Her mother relied on her, and for once, life seemed to be giving her a small window of hope. But despite all the pressure on her shoulders, Maya still held a kindness that wasn't affected by her circumstances. She wasn't the type to ignore someone in need. She wasn't the type to walk past suffering and pretend it wasn't happening. People in her neighborhood often said she had a soft heart in a hard world. And though it didn't seem like much, that compassion would soon lead her to a crossroads she never saw coming. On the morning of the exam, Maya woke up early, her notes spread across the small dining table, her bag packed and ready. She had one mission, one goal, one chance. But fate had a different plan waiting for her outside her door. A plan that would test not her intelligence, but her character. And before the day was over, that one choice would bring the roar of 100 engines to her quiet front yard. As Maya hurried down the cracked sidewalk toward the bus stop, clutching her notes and whispering formulas under her breath, she had no idea that her life was about to take an unexpected turn. The streets were quiet that morning, the kind of eerie calm that makes you feel like the world is holding its breath. She was already calculating how much time she'd have to review once she reached campus, when a sudden violent crash shattered the stillness. Metal scraped asphalt, followed by the sickening thud of something heavy hitting the ground. Maya froze. Her heart lurched. Just a few yards ahead, a motorcycle lay twisted on its side, wheels still spinning, and beside it a man, massive, tattooed, dressed in leather, was sprawled motionless on the pavement. His breathing was ragged and shallow, and his left arm looked badly broken. Maya recognized the patch on his jacket immediately. Hell's Angels. Her breath caught. Everyone in town knew better than to get involved with them. People told stories, some true, some exaggerated. But one thing was certain. They were loyal to their own, and no one wanted trouble with them. But while fear whispered at her to keep walking, something stronger pulled her forward. Maya dropped her bag and ran to the man's side. His face was pale beneath the beard and bruises, and blood seeped from a wound on his leg. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked, her voice trembling. His eyelids flickered, but he couldn't speak. Maya looked around desperately for help, but the street was empty. Cars passed at a distance, drivers refusing to get involved. Her mind raced. She could still make it to the exam if she left now. She could pretend she never saw him. No one would blame her, not with her future on the line. But the thought made her stomach twist. If she walked away, this man might not survive long enough for someone else to help him. Hands shaking, Maya pulled out her phone and dialed emergency services, giving them the exact location before tearing off her scarf to tie a makeshift tourniquet around his leg. She whispered comforting words, even though she didn't know if he could hear her. Minutes felt like hours. Her exam time ticked closer and closer, slipping away like sand through her fingers. By the time the ambulance arrived, Maya's clothes were stained with grease and blood. The paramedics ran to the man, lifting him onto a stretcher. One of them turned to her and said, "If you hadn't stopped, he might have bled out. You saved his life." The words sank into her skin, but they didn't ease the ache of what she'd sacrificed. When she checked the time, her heart dropped. There was no chance of making it. The one exam she had prepared for her whole life, gone. As the ambulance pulled away, Maya stood alone on the sidewalk, overwhelmed by a mix of fear, pride, and heartbreak. She didn't know who the biker was. She didn't know what would happen next. All she knew was that she had saved a life and lost the future she'd fought so hard to reach. She picked up her bag, numb, unaware that this moment, this single act of compassion, would soon bring the entire Hell's Angels Brotherhood rumbling into her quiet world. Maya walked slowly toward the bus stop, each step feeling heavier than the last. The sirens had long faded, but their echo seemed to stay lodged in her chest. She checked the time again, even though she already knew the truth. The exam hall had opened 20 minutes ago. By now, the doors were locked, and the test had already begun. Her scholarship, the one she'd sacrificed sleep, meals, and moments of joy for, was slipping through her fingers like smoke. It didn't feel real. The world around her moved normally. A dog barked in the distance. A vendor opened his stall. The wind rustled through the trees. But Maya stood in the middle of the sidewalk feeling as if everything inside her had been shattered. When she finally reached the school campus, she still rushed toward the exam building out of instinct, as if some miracle might be waiting. But the hallway was silent, the door firmly shut, the guard outside unmoved by her breathless pleas. "I'm sorry," he said, not unkindly. "Once the exam starts, no one is allowed in. Rules are rules." Maya tried to explain. There was a crash. A man was dying. She had to help. But the guard only shook his head. "I believe you," he said, "but I can't change anything." The weight of his words crushed her. She walked outside and sank onto a bench, staring at her trembling hands still faintly stained with blood. People passed her, but no one noticed her pain. Students celebrated finishing the hardest test of their lives. Friends hugged. Some cried with relief, and Maya sat among them like a ghost. By the time she reached home, her mother knew something was wrong. The moment she saw Maya's face, she rushed over, wiping her hands on her apron. "Maya, What happened? Did the exam? But Maya didn't have the strength to explain. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she sank into her mother's arms. Her mother held her close, confusion and fear making her voice tremble. Maya finally told her everything. The crash, the injured biker, the bleeding, the ambulance, the impossible choice she'd been forced to make. Instead of anger, her mother pulled her closer. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "A life is more important than a test. You saved someone's son, someone's brother." But despite her mother's reassurance, Maya felt crushed beneath the weight of everything she had lost. She had always believed that doing the right thing would lead to something good, that kindness mattered, that sacrifice would someday be rewarded. But today life didn't seem fair. Today doing the right thing had cost her everything she'd worked for. Little did Maya know, the world had noticed her sacrifice far more than she realized. And while she sat in her small room that night wondering how she would rebuild her future, a very different conversation was happening across town, one that involved roaring engines, leather jackets, and the undying loyalty of the Hells Angels. While Maya lay awake that night staring at the cracks in her ceiling and wondering if she had ruined her future forever, a very different storm was brewing miles away. The injured biker, whose name she didn't even know, was fighting for his life in the ICU. Doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize him. By dawn, his condition finally improved enough for the nurses to speak with him. His first clear words, spoken through a haze of pain and oxygen tubes, were a question. "Who saved me?" A paramedic stepped forward. "A young girl. She tied a tourniquet and called us just in time. If she hadn't acted, you wouldn't be here." The biker closed his eyes, overwhelmed. His name was Bear, one of the longest-standing members of the Hells Angels chapter in the region, a man known for his strength, loyalty, and an unwavering code of honor. The other bikers considered him family, not just a brother. To them, Bear was someone you protected at all costs. So when word reached the chapter leader, an imposing man named Titan, that Bear had been on the brink of death, every member gathered to hear what happened. When they learned that a teenage girl, alone and without hesitation, had chosen to help him at the expense of her own future, the room fell silent. These were men who lived by the law of loyalty. Violence, toughness, reputation, those were only parts of their world. But honor, that was everything. Titan slammed his fist onto the table. "Find her," he ordered, "and find out what she lost to save one of our own." The brothers sprang into action. They tracked down the paramedics, the police report, the witness statements. It didn't take long to learn the truth. The girl's name was Maya. She had missed a major exam because she stayed with Bear. And she came from a struggling family. The more they uncovered, the more the mood in the biker clubhouse shifted from gratitude to outrage. "She saved Bear," one of the bikers growled, "and now she's being punished for it." Another slammed his helmet onto the table. "That's not right. You don't repay kindness with loss." Titan nodded slowly, eyes burning. "Then we fix it." That night, the Hells Angels gathered in their largest garage, the roar of engines echoing off the concrete. One by one, bikers rolled in until nearly 100 motorcycles filled the space. Titan stood at the front, addressing them like a general before a battle. "Tomorrow morning," he said, "we ride, not for war, not for revenge, but to repay a debt of honor. A girl saved one of ours, and we are going to show her what loyalty looks like." The ground trembled beneath their engines as they revved in unison. Lights glowed off chrome and steel. Men who were feared across cities prepared for the one thing the world never expected from them. An act of gratitude, so massive it would shake Maya's quiet world to its core. The next morning began like any other for Maya. though her heart still felt heavy from the painful loss of the previous day. She moved through the house quietly, trying not to wake her mother as she washed a few dishes, reheated leftover tea, and gathered herself for another long shift at work. Her mind replayed the exam, the moment she saw the biker bleeding on the pavement, the words from the paramedic, "You saved his life." It should have felt like a victory, yet all she felt was defeat. She had saved a man, yes, but at the cost of her dream, and the world didn't seem to care. But just as she stepped outside to leave for work, something strange happened. A low rumble echoed in the distance, faint at first like far-off thunder. Maya paused on the small concrete porch, frowning. The sound grew louder, deeper, turning into a roar that made the window glass vibrate. Birds scattered from trees, dogs barked from inside houses, and neighbors peeked out of windows in confusion. Then around the corner they appeared, dozens of motorcycles, then 24 more, then even more. Within seconds, the entire street was swallowed by the thunder of engines, as nearly 100 Hells Angels bikers rolled into the neighborhood in a massive formation. Every bike gleamed like steel beasts. They moved with precision, lining both sides of the narrow road, their jackets catching the morning sun, their presence swallowing the quiet street whole. Mothers grabbed their children. Curtains flew open. The entire neighborhood watched with dread, certain that some kind of gang war was about to erupt. But the bikers didn't look angry. Their faces were serious, strict, determined, but not hostile. They were here with purpose, with unity, with something deeper. Maya stepped back instinctively, her heart slamming against her ribs. She had no idea what was happening, and fear rushed through her veins like ice. She clutched her bag tightly, eyes wide, frozen in place on the porch. The engines finally cut off, and in the sudden silence, she could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. From the center of the formation, Titan, the chapter leader, stepped forward. He was massive, broad shoulders, thick beard, heavy boots, and flanked by 2 senior bikers. The sight alone would have intimidated anyone, but his expression was calm, almost solemn. He approached Maya slowly, making sure not to startle her. "Are you Maya?" he asked gently, his deep voice carrying across the yard. Her throat tightened. "Yes," she whispered. Titan nodded once, then stepped aside. The crowd of bikers parted like a wave, and through that path a stretcher rolled forward. Bear, weak but awake, was supported by 2 bikers as he slowly stood, still bandaged from the crash. Despite the pain on his face, he managed a small, grateful smile. He removed his oxygen tube and looked directly at her. "You saved my life," he said, his voice rough but full of sincerity. Maya froze, stunned. The pieces suddenly clicked together. The biker she had rescued, the patch on his jacket, the emergency, and now the entire Hells Angels chapter gathered outside her house. Bear lifted a shaking hand. "I owe you everything." Titan stepped forward again, his voice powerful and carrying the weight of 100 men behind him. "Maya," he said, "we found out what helping Bear cost you. We found out you missed the exam because you stayed with him." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as he spoke. "And we're here because in our world, when someone shows loyalty, real loyalty, we pay it back." The gathered bikers nodded, some pounding fists over their hearts as a sign of respect. Maya felt her knees weaken. She had never expected anything in return, certainly not this. Titan continued, "So today, we're not here to scare you. We are here to stand with you, to make things right." Maya's breath caught as the weight of the moment sank in. The thunderous arrival wasn't a threat. It was gratitude, honor, respect. Her quiet life had been shattered overnight, not by tragedy, but by the loyalty of a brotherhood she never expected to meet. Titan stepped closer, his boots crunching softly against the gravel, and lowered his voice as if speaking to someone fragile. "You didn't have to help Bear," he said. "Most people wouldn't have, not with what you had on the line. But you did. And that kind of heart, that kind of courage, deserves better than what you got." Bear, still weak, took a step toward her with the help of two brothers. His voice trembled with emotion. "I would be dead if not for you. I don't get second chances in life, but you gave me one." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small silver pin, his chapter's emblem. "I want to give you something in return, a symbol of our gratitude." He pressed it gently into her hand. "You're family now, whether you want to be or not." The words hit her harder than she expected. Family. She had spent her whole life trying to fight for a future alone, thinking no one outside her own home cared whether she succeeded or failed. Yet here stood 100 strangers, united in a way she had never known, ready to stand behind her. Titan raised a hand, signaling the rest of the chapter. Immediately, several bikers stepped forward carrying folders, envelopes, and even a laptop. "We've already spoken to the school board," Titan announced. "We explained what happened, and we filed an official request for an emergency makeup exam with, let's say, some persuasive encouragement." A few bikers behind him smirked. "They've agreed." Maya gasped, her hands flying to her mouth, her knees nearly buckled. They did?" Titan nodded. "Tomorrow morning you take that exam with full accommodations, no penalty." Before Maya could speak, another biker, a younger man named Razor, stepped forward. "And that scholarship you were hoping for," he said. "Consider it covered, whether the school grants it or not." He held up a thick envelope. "We put together a fund. Every brother pitched in. You saved one of ours. We invest in one of yours." Tears welled in Maya's eyes. She tried to speak, but emotion tightened her throat. I don't know what to say," she whispered. Bear shook his head. "You don't have to say anything. Just know this." He gestured to the sea of motorcycles behind him. "If the world ever turns its back on you, if anyone tries to hurt you, take advantage of you, disrespect you, or make you feel alone again, you won't be facing it alone." Titan's voice boomed, strong and steady. "From today forward, Maya, you've got 100 brothers watching your back." The words echoed through the neighborhood. Some neighbors watched in stunned silence, others in awe. No one had ever seen the Hells Angels gather for anything other than their own business. But this was different. This was a declaration, a pledge, a promise. Maya pressed her hand to her chest, overwhelmed by the warmth flooding through her. She had always believed that doing the right thing mattered, even if no one noticed. But now she saw that sometimes the universe returns what you give, just not in the way you expect. Here on her small porch, surrounded by roaring engines and hardened men with unexpectedly soft hearts, Maya realized something powerful. Her kindness hadn't been a mistake. It had changed everything. For the rest of the morning, the neighborhood buzzed with a stunned mixture of curiosity, fear, and awe. Families who had watched from behind curtains now stepped cautiously outside, pretending to water plants or check their mail just to get a closer look at the unbelievable sight. Never in the history of the town had so many Hells Angels gathered peacefully, let alone outside the home of a teenage girl. And as the bikers spoke kindly with Maya, offering her encouragement and support, people began to realize that this wasn't a threat. It was gratitude, unlike anything the community had ever seen. Children peeked from behind their parents' legs, mesmerized by the chrome and leather. Elderly neighbors stood on their porches, whispering, trying to understand how a girl like Maya could be connected to men like these. Inside the house, Maya's mother stood frozen in the doorway, one hand pressed to her heart. She had overheard everything: the exam, the scholarship, the fund the bikers had created. Her eyes glossed with tears as she watched a group of intimidating men handle her daughter with the kind of gentleness usually reserved for parents. When Maya turned to her, her mother didn't speak. She simply pulled her into a tight embrace. "I told you," her mother whispered, trembling. "Doing the right thing always matters." As the bikers lined the street, some repairing Maya's broken front steps, others clearing debris from her small yard, she realized she wasn't just receiving help. She was witnessing a transformation. The same men society avoided, feared, or judged were now cleaning, rebuilding, and protecting. Later that day, Titan walked her through the plan for her makeup exam. They had arranged transportation, support, and even a tutor from a local college who volunteered to help her review that evening. "No pressure," Titan said, as he handed her a polished notebook filled with study tips. "But don't think we won't be outside that school waiting. We believe in you." Maya laughed for the first time in days, a small, genuine sound that eased the tightness in her chest. She spent the afternoon studying, this time with clarity instead of despair. Her fear of failure had been replaced by something else: hope. That evening, the entire street glowed with the warm hum of community. The bikers grilled food in the yard. Neighbors brought dishes to share. Children took photos with the motorcycles. And Maya found herself sitting with Bear, who told her stories of the road, of brotherhood, and of the family he had found among the angels. He spoke of loyalty, not the performative kind, but the real kind that stands unshaken in the face of danger and sacrifice. "You fit that definition better than most adults I know," he told her softly. "You acted without hesitation. That's rare." As the sun set and the engines rumbled one last time before the bikers rode out for the night, Titan made a final promise. "Tomorrow, you walk into that exam with a whole army behind you. Whatever happens, you're not alone." And when Maya went to bed that night, instead of the crushing weight of failure, she felt a quiet, glowing strength building inside her. Her dream wasn't over. It was being rebuilt, piece by piece, heartbeat by heartbeat, into something even bigger than she had ever imagined. Sometimes life puts us at a crossroads where the smart choice and the right choice are not the same. Maya stood there on that cracked sidewalk. One path led to the exam hall, to the scholarship, to the future she had bled for. The other path led to a bleeding stranger most people would have crossed the street to avoid. She chose the harder road, the one that cost her everything she had planned. Not because she expected a reward, but because letting a man die while she chased a grade was simply unthinkable to her heart. And in that single quiet act of courage, she taught us the most beautiful and painful truth. Real kindness is never convenient. It never checks the clock. And it almost always asks you to be paid in full up front, with no guarantee of return. Yet the universe has a memory longer than ours. What Maya gave away in a moment of pure humanity came back to her 100-fold. Not because she demanded it, but because genuine goodness creates ripples that travel farther than fear, farther than judgment, farther than the sound of 100 Harley engines roaring down a poor street to say, "You are not alone." That day, the toughest men in town bowed their heads to a 19-year-old girl who had nothing but a scarf and a conscience. They reminded all of us that loyalty, honor, and gratitude are not dead. They're just waiting for someone brave enough to prove they still matter. So here's the lesson I carry from Maya. Do the right thing, even when it costs you the dream you're holding in your hands. Do it when no cameras are rolling, when no one will ever know, when it might ruin everything you've worked for. Because the world is watching more closely than we think, and sometimes, miraculously, it answers back with love louder than thunder. If this story moved you, if it made you believe again in unexpected grace, drop A in the comments and tell me, when was the last time you chose kindness over convenience? Share your moment. I read every single one. And if you don't want to miss the next story that will restore your faith in humanity, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We need more light in this world, and together, we're keeping it burning. Thank you for being here.